go? All right. Hello, listeners. You're listening to KRUI 89.7 FM. This is Aman, news director here at KRUI. This is my co-host, Ria, and we have Anshika behind the scenes. And today we're going to be sitting down with Hollywood director Morgan Sackett. Morgan is an Emmy-winning producer, Emmy-nominated director known for his work on A Man on the Inside, Hacks, The Good Place, Veep, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Parks and Recreation. He is a partner in commercial and television production company Dunshire Productions, where he directed many successful brand campaigns, and is also a partner at Diamond Docs, a production company behind multiple Emmy award-winning films, including the documentary Sound City and the Bee Gees movie. Morgan is a graduate of the University of Iowa and was raised in Okoboji, Iowa. Morgan, welcome to KRUI Studios.
Thank you for having me.
Let's jump right into it. I'll ask the first question. You grew up in Okoboji and graduated from here at the university. How did your time here influence your path into film and television?
My time here was a lot of fun. Maybe not the most studious resident of the city of Iowa City. And it wasn't, I didn't really have film or Hollywood in mind when I was here. I was a political science major and a history minor. I had a dream of moving to California. I had an uncle there that I would visit during, from when I was a little kid through junior high and high school. So I knew I wanted to go to California. Both my parents were attorneys. I thought I was going to go to law school. And then, junior year, senior year, somewhere, I took the LSAT, and I did well enough that even with my not rigorous study habits, I was probably going to go somewhere, but I just decided to take a year off. I moved to California, and through some just happenstances, I got into a temporary agency that placed me at a company called Castle Rock Entertainment for a 2-day job that turned into, I worked there for 8 years, starting kind of in the bottom at the mailroom. And so Iowa City, I think this was a great place with people from all over, and I had a very funny group of friends, and we were constantly writing stupid things, and like any sort of correspondence, and it wasn't email back then, it was sort of letters or newsletters for the organizations we were in, and also just we would do bits that made us laugh for no other reason than that. Probably from the outside felt obnoxious and stupid, but for us it was really, really funny, and that is a little bit what working in comedy shows is like. You're kind of trying to do that. You're trying to capture some of them on film, but for everything you put in a show, there are about 50 dumb comedy bits that go on behind the scenes that don't make it in or were never intended to make it in. So I think it was really that I enjoyed being around people that wanted to make other people laugh and sometimes only make ourselves laugh. But Iowa City was really, for me looking back, college was a time to get my stuff together a little bit and learn to be an adult. I think if I would have gone to LA at 18, it would have been a total disaster. So I think by the time I got out of Iowa City, as I got through it, I learned to study more, or learned what you could accomplish to get things done. So, and I think moving to California, not knowing a soul, and getting in the entertainment business was great because the hours are super long. And I think moving far from home, I didn't have any other friends out there and everything, so I could really focus on it.
So when you moved to California and started, doing your work in Hollywood, what was something about Hollywood that was exactly like you imagined, or was a stereotype, and what was something that was totally different?
It was different in that and I got into, like I said, I was at Castle Rock for a few months in the mailroom or just whatever they needed. And then I got on a TV show, and first maybe it's glamorous. You sort of think it's glamorous and it all happens fast. And I'd come out with my uncle, who was an attorney in LA, and I'd gone to the Tonight Show and watched that tape, and it was so different. It was so much smaller and less sort of glamorous when you were there in person, but they shot it in an hour and it was done. When you're making TV shows, it's you kind of from afar, you think, oh, everybody's glamorous and it's all the actors. But if you're on usually a shoot day, you've got 4 or 5 actors and you've got another 125 people who are behind the scenes that are Some are writers, some are electricians, some are, I mean, it's kind of like if you were running a big corporation, you would have the marketing people and the executives and the factory workers and the truck drivers, but they're all jammed into this sound stage and they all have to work together to make it happen. It's not, there's sort of no separation. Now, there certainly are executives at the studios and the networks and everything, but I've really spent my career making the shows and being sort of, you know, boots on the ground actually making them. So I think that was really different, and the hours were really long, and but also I guess your CEO sometimes was kind of a like an inspired creative person, so it wasn't it was fun to not you know, the first show I ever worked on was with two famous like a guy named Rob Reiner, who was a very famous director, and Chris Guest, who directed tons of these great mockumentary movies. And those two guys made something that they just loved to work on. And it was really just for them. It came out, it was a very unique show, and it came out and the public didn't know what to make of it at all, but it was so fun to make and they were having so much fun. So I think that it was, first of all, I didn't know that it took that many people to make these things. And certainly my parents didn't understand what the hell I was doing and thought I should have gone to law school or done something that felt more realistic. But I think that was the most surprising thing, that it's a real job. And there are people that you work with that are crafting things, they're building things out of wood and steel, and there's people that are writing, and you know, it's sort of all these disciplines on each individual project are working together. And yeah, so it was much more of a job and a business than I ever thought it was going to be.
Speaking of the shows you've worked on, you've produced and directed some of the most iconic sitcoms of the past decade. What draws you to comedy in particular?
It is, like, I love watching dramas on TV. Amy Poehler and I did a movie called Moxie that was kind of more dramatic than most of the stuff I did. But other than that, I've done one drama pilot. And I love watching drama, but it is, like, the hours are long, and it is so much more fun to laugh a lot at work than, like, the best case scenario on some of these amazing dramas. And I respect deeply the people who do them. But, you know, you're on those sets and, like, there's a big emotional scene coming and everybody's really quiet and, like, don't talk to the actress right now or the actor. They're getting into their thing. And, like, the best case scenario at the end of the take, everybody on the set is bawling. And I would much rather be somewhere where everybody's laughing. And I think, like, the sets are fun, but just the process of creating these things is fun. We're doing 3 shows right now. One is kind of mature at 5 seasons. One is the second season's about to air on Netflix, and one is a brand new show that we will start shooting in January. And it is really fun to, like, work on creating the characters and then find the actors to fill those characters, which often changes what the character is, and just, like, what are funny situations that you can put them in, often from your own life or from one of the writers' own lives. And then, you know, it's a very collaborative process. There's occasionally you'll, like, listen to somebody in Hollywood or any business and, you know, they'll be, like, thanking my crew and my cast. And to me, there are some singular talents that do this. You know, Paul Thomas Anderson or somebody like that. But most of these things are very much a team project. And that's what I love, is finding that team and letting everybody do their thing. But it's, like, you know, you're with some of the funniest people in the world. There are tons of laughs. Even if the show doesn't turn out well, you have a good time making it. And if you're going to do something for 14 hours a day, it's fun to laugh about it. Laugh during that time.
Just to build off that, Parks and Rec, I think, was like one of the first comedies I watched as a kid. I really got into it. Rewatched it.
That makes me feel really young. Thank you.
But, like, the chemistry on that show, it was really outstanding. How much of that comedy and the famous quotes and the bits and the scenes was, like, pre-written, scripted, planned, and how much of that was, like, improv, like, on the moment, like, in the set?
That show, you know, Amy Poehler is who I've been lucky enough to work with a ton in the new show we're doing right now. She's in and is creating and is going to star in. She is an unbelievable improv comedian. She started a thing called UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade, that a generation of comedy talent has come out of. She and 3 of her friends started that in New York in the probably 90s. Aziz Ansari, super funny, improv-y. Nick Offerman was a more classically trained actor. You know, what we would do on that show, we would write the scripts. We would always try to get it as scripted on camera. It was also very helpful that show was shot mockumentary style, where the cameras were whipping around. So if somebody said something funny, normal coverage, if you and I were sitting here, there'd be cameras on you. And if I told a really funny joke, the cameras aren't on me. But those cameras, both, you didn't have to have them on it, but they were whipping around. So we would write the scripts. We would always do a take or 2 as scripted. And then, but Aziz, and then everybody really, those characters, Nick Offerman's original character was one thing. And then we got to know Nick, and suddenly Ron Swanson was a woodworker, and Ron Swanson, you know, so I think the best things is to, like, if you write your character and it's like, we got to find somebody that fits that perfectly, or if they don't fit that perfectly, we're going to make them sound just like this. That's, to me, not a good recipe for success. We let everybody shine. Chris Pratt was on that show and was supposed to be, he was a guest star in the first 6 episodes, and Anne was dating this loser with broken legs, and he was going to be gone after 6 episodes. And our casting director, Allison Jones, who's the greatest comedy casting director in the world, and Chris he'd done a show on something called the WB network called Everwood, which was kind of like a soap opera-y he was like the handsome young kid. He'd never done comedy. Allison's like, believe me, this guy is funny. Aziz and Aubrey Plaza, Allison called us and said, you guys, you just need to meet with these people and hire them. And at the time, we didn't have a show written. The network wanted a show. They wanted a spinoff of The Office. And Mike and Greg Daniels didn't want to do that. And so when I got hired, it still wasn't, we didn't really have a concept. Amy Poehler, they wanted to be in it. She was pregnant. She couldn't do it. The show was supposed to come on. NBC had the Super Bowl that year. They were going to have an Office episode right after the Super Bowl, and this show was going to premiere right after that. But we felt like Amy is so important that we will cast Amy. We will miss that Super Bowl window because she was having a baby at a certain point. And we'll, instead of making 13 episodes, we'll only make 6 episodes, which was, people thought we were kind of like, that was a crazy choice to make. But I also think it sort of worked. I think if that pilot would have come on after the Super Bowl with like 30 million viewers, about 29 million of them wouldn't have known what to make of it. So back to your original question about how much is improv. So we know what all the people can do. And what we do is we'd have our script, and then we also had what's called a candy bag. We had these silly terms, a candy bag for every scene that was alt jokes. Because when you're writing in a writer's room, you'll put a joke in, and then you maybe beat the joke, or you'll try another joke. And instead of just leaving those all in the writer's room, we'd always have this big packet of alt jokes. Because sometimes a joke doesn't work on set, and then everyone's scrambling to try to come up with a new one. It's much easier to look back at like your next 9 jokes that you had in that spot. And so we would do that. We'd always do different. We'd try to get different things. That show was all about options. And there was definitely improv. We would always do, if we had time, unless we were really out of time, we'd do a fun run, we called it. And that was just like, you know what the point of the show, this scene is, and just do your thing. And we had so many, and even the ones that weren't improv comedians like Nick and Chris Pratt, like were great at improving in character. Like Chris Pratt and Nick's had far fewer improvs than Amy and Aziz and Aubrey, who were like trained UCB comedians. But I would say their like hit ratio of keeping those in the show was much higher. A lot of the fun runs were totally useless because they just were too long. And we were on network TV, which is 21 minutes and 30 seconds. So you can't have a 4-minute scene that should be 1 minute. But some of the greatest lines definitely came out of improv. And Pratt did some. We got ourselves to the Grand Canyon. And the show was also not a hit at all. We really were about to be canceled every year. And I think people now think it was a big hit, and it wasn't. Our ratings were terrible. Every year we thought we were going to get canceled. We would have gotten canceled after season 2, except Amy was pregnant with her second child, and they let us stay in production and shoot a couple episodes, 6 episodes of season 3 before we stopped season 2, because she was going to be giving birth when we should have started shoot. And they said, we want to cancel the show. They're like, well, they're already shooting season 3, so they let us continue. But we ended up at the Grand Canyon with Chris and Aubrey, and we had to get Volkswagen to pay for it somehow. And we got there at dawn, and this was like them checking something off their bucket list. And they get there and they're looking out over the Grand Canyon. They're saying, this is so amazing. And this is amazing. And Pratt looks at her and he's like, where are all the presidents? Like, as he thought he was at Mount Rushmore. He was so stupid that he didn't understand that. And Aubrey's look of disdain and disgust with him was actual, like, because she didn't see that coming. And, and all of the cast had these things that they, some of them may have thought of ahead of time, and they would hold on to them. They wouldn't sort of workshop them. They would try to, and they would also try to break. Everyone tried to break Offerman, because Offerman was, he was like Mount Rushmore. It was very hard to break Offerman, but they also were having so much fun playing with each other and things. So it was a fair amount of improv, but they trusted the words as well. Like, I would say 90% of the show was written, but some of the highlights are definitely improv.
If your directing style were a genre of music, what would it be?
I don't know. I don't know if it would be like jam band kind of thing where
That's good.
You let everybody do their things, because I really feel like it is a team effort. And I mean, I don't know if I had the genius and talent of some of these singular talents, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. I don't. I feel like I have a sense of what everybody brings to the party. And I love the first show I was on second show I was on as a PA was Seinfeld, and Jerry Seinfeld admittedly was like a stand-up, not the greatest actor, but I have been on a lot of shows where that lead character wants to be the funniest person on set. And Jerry, nothing made him happier, and I'd say the same thing about Amy, than letting her co-stars, his or her co-stars, get the joke and get the laugh. And I think it would be that. I would love to, like, let that guy jam for a little while, and I guess a jam band with some discipline, because sometimes, there are movies, and I think now that shows are streaming and there's not sort of a time constraint on comedies, I think there's sort of a shelf life on comedies that when you get into the like 40-minute episode of a comedy show, you're maybe sticking around too long. So the probably one of the most important Hollywood adages, which is really old, is leave them wanting more. And a lot of people don't do that. But yeah, I think jam band would be the music, which can be annoying, jam bands, but they can also be fun.
You founded Diamond Docs. What inspired you to move into documentary filmmaking, and how is that process different from narrative television?
Well, Diamond Docs, I started on Seinfeld, and I moved on to produce other shows. And then when the Seinfeld DVDs came out, which DVDs were a big business for your audience, they may not even know what they are, but it was a really big business, and they let me sort of and there was a lot of added material on the DVDs. You do audio commentaries, you do little snippets and things. So I would do a show, and then in the summer I would make a season or two of Seinfeld DVDs, and I did little documentaries about like each season or one of the famous episodes in the season, and I did a TV special about how it all came about, because it was a very unique path how that show both got made and then survived. It got canceled twice early on in its run, and that was really fun to me. I then went and made my one drama pilot that I thought was a really interesting thing, and it just kind of got turned upside down by Network Notes, and they decided to really change the tone of it, and I was really disheartened. And somehow a friend of mine who was a writer had done a movie for Disney, and Disney was making this huge sailing documentary with Roy Disney, who was Walt Disney's nephew, and they needed somebody to produce it. And I grew up in Okoboji, Iowa. We sailed tiny little boats. This was not exactly what they were doing a movie about, but I had enough of an understanding of it. So I got hired to do this documentary. There was a director on board. The director and Roy very quickly butted heads. I found these two other directors that I really liked and I thought would make a more interesting movie. The movie turned out okay. It was not the most interesting subject matter, but those two guys and I really clicked. And so we started a company called Diamond Docs right after that. And documentaries are so fun. I think if I could do anything, I would make documentaries. Now, they're not the most profitable thing in the world. They take a long time, but it is really like, the first one that we did after that one, I did one about the Sherman Brothers, who were these, Disney hired me to do one other one about the Sherman Brothers, who were these famous songwriters who wrote like all the early Disney movie music, and like not Snow White, but like Mary Poppins and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and like It's a Small World, all the theme park music they wrote. And then Mark and Paul and I did a documentary sort of on the birth of Silicon Valley. And then we started making other ones. And then when I met with Greg Daniels and Mike Schur about Parks and Recreation, Greg really liked the idea. He really, the Office was a mockumentary, and there was this documentary crew there. And Greg really liked that I'd worked in comedy, but also knew how to make a documentary, because they wanted Parks to be that same style, and they wanted to maybe heighten the documentary elements of it, which, as it turns out, we kind of made them less, but eventually. So we started that, and then I immediately got Parks and Recreation. So I've done things. I did a documentary that Amy Poehler directed about Lucille Ball, Lucy and Desi. We're making another one right now. But Mark and Paul have gone on. They did a movie called The Cove, which won the Oscar. They did a movie called Icarus, which won the Oscar. They've done dozens of other documentaries. So that, like, I think if I decided, I have enough money to stop working so hard, I would, or whatever, if I'm bored with what I'm doing, I would love to just go make documentaries. Because it's like going to get a master's degree in something that you don't really have to take a test on. You have to make an interesting project about it, but you don't have to. And some of the shows we're doing, like the show we're doing with Amy Poehler right now, is set in Greece at an archaeological dig. And so I spent a few weeks this summer on all these digs in Greece researching. And so it's really fun to learn new things from the experts, and often you have good access if you're making a movie about them.
I'll have you do question 7, and I think we'll skip 8, 9, and 10.
So we've talked a bit about your TV work and I guess some of like the film work with the documentaries. How does working on a film set differ from a TV set, and what do you enjoy most about each format?
The actual shooting isn't that different. I think what's different is, and I guess it has also changed. When you were doing the early days, we were making 22 episodes of television a year, and it's really, you start the writer's room, you get maybe 5 or 6 scripts written, and then you start shooting, and you're still writing, and you're producing, and you're editing, and the shows are airing, and you're doing all those things at once. Now it's a little different with like the streaming shows where you only make 8 of them, because we usually write all of them before we start, 8 or 10 of them, and then you shoot them, and you are editing as you go, usually because they do want them. And then a movie is like one big episode that you spend a ton of time getting it ready, and then you shoot it all, and then you do all the post-production on it. So it's fun. TV shows, you have a lot of meetings every episode. You have a production meeting and concept meetings and things like that. So that part of it's really fun. It's a little intimidating where you prep the whole thing and then you get on it and you're shooting for 40 days in a row, and some actor gets sick or some storm happens, and it's a really that you don't have as much flexibility because you can't like jump to the next episode or kind of write your way out of things quite as much. But I think they're all fun. Like I did, and I've done some really fun movies. I did this movie called Pop Star, which was weirdly also a mockumentary. And that was like, I've tried to do shows that sort of have heart and kind of some meaning in them. And Pop Star was really just for fun and comedy, and those guys are so funny. So, and it was a fictional pop star who was supposed to be world famous, which is hard because everywhere he goes there should be fans and things like that, and it was for Universal Pictures, and they kind of cut our budget right before we started. And I'm really proud of that movie. When it came out in theaters, nobody went to it. It bombed hard, but I feel like it's gotten a following since then. And then I did 2 movies with Amy Poehler. One of them was called Wine Country, which was Amy and Maya Rudolph and Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch and like all of her SNL friends, which was sort of based on a trip that they'd taken to Napa And that was fun because we had the script, we had the cast for a long time. So we got to really just focus on like, what's the best way to do this thing? And then we shot for 40 days. And I don't know, they're both fun. It's kind of, for a few years I was alternating between the two things. And that was fun because TV shows are really fun. And also if an episode's not so good, it's over in a few days and you move on to another one. Or if you have a guest director who comes in, it's like, I'm not really clicking with that person. They're also gone in a couple days. So, but it was fun to alternate. I haven't done a movie in a little while because we've been very lucky to be busy with a lot of TV shows.
AI virtual production and digital writers are transforming the industry. Do these tools excite you or concern you?
I don't know that they do either. I don't think, people are definitely playing around with it, and it is going to change things. Like our commercial production company, most of the commercials we do are like celebrity driven. We have a celebrity at the heart of them. I think we're going to be able to still make those. But I think if like these pharmaceutical ads where it's just people walking by a lake or playing tennis, people who are just sort of generic people, I do think in 2 or 3 years, none of those will be shot live. Those will all be AI. And I feel bad because that's going to take a lot of people out of work. I do think AI may be the most sort of game-changing thing, but I guess I've also been around long enough where it was sort of, when I started, it was kind of a 4-network like ecosystem and the movie studios, and home video didn't really exist and DVDs didn't exist. Home video comes out and it was going to kill movie theaters. It probably harmed them some, but they're still movie theaters. Streaming came out, which is DVRs came out and no one watched commercials. And so all these networks that made money on their commercials were hurting. Streaming came out, which is a totally different thing. And the businesses keep changing. Luckily, up to this point, they still need people to make the stuff. And so that I kind of, if I had to say what I really do, like if producer wasn't a word you could use, I'd say I'm like kind of a factory manager, where I have to get, I'm getting the designers how to make the product and the people to actually fabricate it. Our product just is our entertainment shows. So I think it's going to change things. I guess I'm not scared of it because like every new technology also brings a lot of great things. I think it will hurt creativity. I mean, I know, but it's, I don't know. I think there's still something, this may, it's going to get better and better. We did this documentary, like I said, at the beginning of Silicon Valley, and we interviewed a guy named Gordon Moore who had created something called Moore's Law, which sort of drove the technology business for years and years. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. And he was so thoughtful, and essentially the idea was the computing power of these chips would double every 18 months, and the business stayed on that path. He said that in maybe the early 70s, and it really stayed true for a long time. AI, they've said that would the same thing happen. I don't think it's quite kept up to that timeline, but it certainly will get better and better. There's also been sort of a resurgence of live events and entertainment, and we've done some sort of weird, more with our commercial company, like weird, almost like experimental theater things for promotion. And, I think it's going to open some things like that up. I don't know. I think you've just got to stay curious and stay up on it. I think there are definitely people like, I'm never using it. And that was when I started, people shot stuff on film and video cameras were like heresy, and, whatever that has changed, and it didn't kill everything. It's still, it's a little scary, I guess. Maybe I'm a little scared. I'm scared. I have kids. One of them is a film major in college. And I think a film business, if she continues to pursue it, will be very different than the one I did. But that doesn't mean there won't be something for her.
All right. Your IMDb has you listed as working on a Field of Dreams TV adaptation. Is that project still moving forward, or will any part of it be filmed here in Iowa?
That is a passion project for us. We, Mike Schur and I have a deal at Universal Television we have for a long time. That is a Universal film. They came to us mostly to Mike in like 2018, 19, asked, constantly they're bringing IP to us that they have. And they're like, would you guys be interested in doing something with this or that? he is a baseball fan. He's also very thoughtful in it and wanted to explore, like, that show is that movie's all about nostalgia and like there's good things about nostalgia and there's bad things about nostalgia. Sometimes it's like keep the status quo, and that isn't always great. So we got into it. The pandemic happened, and we said we would do it. We need to take it out to the town. We have a big vision for it. It's going to be kind of expensive. The pandemic happens. Everything stops for a little bit. We are making some other shows. By the time we get back to it and we start writing it, Peacock is a thing, which is a new streamer that Universal has, and they say, we want to make it. And we're like, great, but it's expensive. They're like, great, we'll make it. We started casting. We wrote it, and it is, if you're familiar with the movie, at the end of the movie, like, if you build it, they will come. All these people are driving down the driveway to this field, and they're going to save the farm and all this kind of thing. And we certainly tell the story of the movie. We wrote, and I think they're beautiful scripts. We wrote about what happens once those people get there, what goes on. And there was also sort of another element that was in the future, and the girl in the movie, who was played by Gabby Hoffman, our girl was a little bit older, but we see her as an adult and her relationship with her father. And so anyway, we wrote 7 episodes. We cast it. We had some great people. A lot of them were people that we had worked with. Kristen Bell was going to be in it, Nick Offerman, Andre Brower, the late, great Andre Brower. Was kind of going to play the James Earl Jones part. We had a handful of, Will Harper was going to play a part who was in The Good Place. And we wrote it. We rented a field, rented a farm in Ankeny, Iowa. We built we scouted, Mike and I scouted. We came to the Field of Dreams game that they had, the first one in Dyersville, where the Yankees played the White Sox. We got all this stuff set up with Major League Baseball. We wrote the scripts. We were casting. We were going to shoot part of it in California, and we were going to shoot like 30 days in Iowa. We built this field, painted a farmhouse. It was beautiful, planted corn. And I was actually in the car on the way to the airport to fly to Des Moines to meet people in Scout, and Peacock pulled the plug on it. There were new people at Peacock. It was expensive. The state of Iowa had been very generous with us with some like grants and things like that, because they saw the value. They saw that this movie that had been made there 30 years ago was still bringing in tourism. And I think that was very smart of them. And we had a California tax incentive. We'd done sort of everything to make it as cost effective as we can, but it still was a big project. And it was heartbreaking. It kind of knocked us. We've always been super prolific, and it really knocked us down for a few months. The field is still there. Nick Offerman was in Des Moines. He has a book tour going on, and he was in Des Moines a few weeks ago. He stopped by the field. The family who owns the field, we rented this chunk of land for a year. We built the field because we needed to shoot it during all seasons. They have kept it alive. We had this company called Musco, which is a Iowa-based company that builds most of the sports fields in the world. They built it for us. It's got drainage. I mean, it's not major league level, but it's a really nice field surrounded by corn in this picturesque farmhouse. The family has kept it, and they do charity baseball games to raise money for high school teams. They did Fairway, which is an Iowa or a Midwestern grocery store chain. They have a campaign where if you grill it, they will come, where the Fairway guy is out there. So like this family's kept it alive, and we definitely keep it in the back of our heads as like we would love to revisit that someday and ideally come back and shoot it in Iowa. And we did a PA training program in Iowa, and I was excited to try to give the Iowa film industry a little bit of a booster, at least inspire some people from here to see us make that and want to get into the business. But it was a blow, and the people that did that at Peacock are no longer at Peacock, and we're back in business with them. And there's that thing in that movie: if you build it, they will come. We hope that somehow this thing manifests itself and comes back.
I guess besides Field of Dreams, if you could direct one dream project, any genre, collaboration, what would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I think something like that where it's sort of an all-star team of all the people I've been lucky enough to work with. I don't know what the story would be, but and even the show we're about to start shooting, we probably 50% of the crew are people that we worked with on Parks and Recreation, and those are such joyful. They're, like I said, they're all hard work, but those are joyful things to make. So I don't know what it would be, but I would really. That's the other fun thing about our business that my parents didn't really understand at the beginning was, you know, in the first 10 years I had 50 jobs, and they were attorneys their whole life. My mom was a judge. You know, they had probably 3 jobs in their entire 40-year career. So, but each job, some of them, the shows are terrible, but you're like, oh my God, that woman is great at her job, or as an actress, or as a writer. And so I think if I could like have almost a draft, and pick a team from all the people I've worked with in the past and make something with them, that's what I would do. And I kind of feel like I know who the writer would be and who some of the actors would be. That would be a fun thing to do.
Maybe a film about your own career.
Yeah, that would be boring. But
we've talked a lot about your successes, but I'm sure you've experienced some blunders along the way. What's one mistake every filmmaker should make at least once?
I think I started in Seinfeld and I worked at Castle Rock, and I had this run that I made a good living, and I made a lot of pilots. We did one called The Choppy Show that was so funny, and it was the Groundlings, which is a comedy group in Los Angeles. It was a guy who had a very famous Groundlings character, and we turned it into a comedy that bombed so hard. And, you know, so I think taking a chance, like my hit ratio recently has been unbelievable, and I feel so fortunate for that. But most shows don't make it. And it's not that the people making them are bad. You make it with the same group that you just made a great show. I think the luck that you have, like the right cast coming through the door, it airing on the right platform or network that actually people see it right away and they let you. You know, because Parks struggled, and like even creatively, it like kind of started to hit its stride by episode 5. It could have easily been canceled after 2 episodes. So I don't know. I think don't be afraid to try something different, because there's sort of a race when something works that everybody tries to make that again, and it's a race to be second sometimes. Like that worked, we're going to make something just like that. I think keep making weird shit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we're running low on time, so I got 2 more questions for you. Which up-and-coming filmmakers or trends are you secretly excited about?
I'm seeing a lot of great short-form comedy in, you know, TikTok, and some of it is just kind of dumb jokes, but I'm amazed by some of the stories that are being told in like 90-second increments. And I'm not talking about like the stacking dramas or things that are like telling a long story. I think people are getting and it's a little bit what you deal with when you do a commercial. Commercials, when we started, are very hard when you have to tell a story in 30 seconds. And often you're not telling a deep story, but it does help if something tracks. And that's what's really fun to me, is when you see somebody really tell a story in 60 seconds or 90 seconds you can't do it all with words. You can't jam enough words into 90 seconds to do it. You're telling it with feeling or camera or reactions. And some of those people just go by, you see it. And then some of them were trying to like, let's get those actors in, or let's get, you know, we've had some writers come into the rooms over the years. From one woman we hired on Parks, even, she just had the funniest Twitter going. And, you know, and we had all these people that were like Harvard trained writers. I think she actually did go to Harvard, but wasn't in the, you know, the Lampoon is the famous Harvard comedy magazine, where I've worked with a ton of people from that. But I think and it used to be you would go to like comedy clubs and sketch things, but now those things are kind of coming to you because people are putting these things on. So I don't know, that's really fun to sort of, you can't get too sucked down the rabbit hole, or that'll be 12 hours of your day, as people know. But I think like finding people that can tell concise stories, and that's been a really fun thing.
Okay, finally, if there's a student or young adult listening at home who wants to be in your position and find similar success, what message would you give them?
I would say just, again, I didn't have a path. I didn't go to film school. I didn't do any of those things. So I don't think that that's a bad path. But I do think be really curious. try to get to a place where things are being made, and that doesn't necessarily mean Los Angeles. I think it did when I started. That was where a lot of things were coming from. And also just make stuff or work on stuff. I was on these shows and working tons of hours, but I would always do short films on the weekend, or do, one show I was working on for Disney, and I was shooting an independent film at night. I literally didn't sleep. And my new coworkers on the ABC show they called me the ghost, because I would just like stumble in the mornings. I think they all probably thought I had a huge drinking problem, but I had I worked too much problem. So I think just do as many things as you can, and don't be afraid to fail. And I think in the writing thing, people often will write something like, this is great, this is my thing. And when that doesn't happen, they get discouraged. And whatever you wrote first is probably bad, and whatever you wrote second is probably also bad, but maybe a little bit better. And often, just keep writing. You have to treat it like a job, and I think a lot of people don't do that when they're creating things. They think it's just going to come to them. I'm going to be inspired. I'm going to sit down. It's like, you got to get up every morning. I mean, some people can do that. That's the other thing about this business. Some people, this is what worked for me. I'm not saying this is a prescriptive thing, but just try to get around as many creative people as you can and do as much work, and especially when you're young and single and don't have many bills to pay.
Morgan, thank you for sitting down with us and sharing your insights. I'm sure it's inspiring for a lot of Iowa students to hear how someone that started here turned their beginnings here in such a dynamic career.
Well, thank you for having me, and again, take this advice with a grain of salt, because it worked for me, but I hope if anyone's interested, they find luck as well.
Thank you for listening.